Hello, friend. I'm Kerry Pharr. Welcome to In Your Corner. My good friend Paul Castoe joins me today, and he is the former president of the Tennessee Songwriters Association International. Paul, so good to see you. Thank you for joining me.
Great to see you. Great to see you. Thanks for having me over.
So tell me a little bit about, the Tennessee Songwriters Association, first of all. Then we'll talk about people that are trying to make it in the big time in Nashville.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Tennessee Songwriters Association, TSAI, is a nonprofit, all-volunteer songwriting group dedicated to helping songwriters all the way up through, we have beginners, all the way up through people with major cuts, and a lot of those folks come back. Of course, at that point, they're helping us, and helping all the members and the writers. But, workshops, song critiques, all the things that help the songwriters, and, of course, pitching songs. That's the big one, bringing in to get, because everybody writes a song and we want to help them write the best song possible, but then we want somebody to cut it. So that's a lot of that process. I was elected 7 years ago. I retired just a couple of months ago from being president, but I'm still in the organization. One of the things that I wanted to do when I was elected was take that organization and just try to do something even more. It's 48 years old organization or something like that. And we just had a phenomenal award show at Harkin Hall over here. We gave Bill Anderson a Lifetime Achievement Award, and he was so gracious to come and gave the most amazing acceptance, 15 minutes probably. You can check that out. Harkin Hall was where we did it, and they have the video, and they're working with all of that too. But the organization's been around a long time, and that's what I wanted to do, was just try to do something more. And I looked at the condition of country music and the condition of country radio, and like a lot of us, I wasn't happy. And I like traditional country music, and I don't like rap and hip hop. So I know a lot of folks do, and that's not the point. But a lot of the argument, it seems these days, is about that being an either or situation. This is country and this isn't country, and this should be on country radio and this shouldn't be on country radio. And I don't really see any point in having that argument. I think a real good education folks can get was, one of the things that happened the first year I was elected was Ken Burns did that amazing documentary about the history of country music. And you could just see layer after layer after layer of things that became incorporated into what we call country music. There was a time when Merle Haggard was not country. They called him a folk guy from California, right? So, you could just watch that develop and develop and develop. And I think a lot of the industry views it the same way. But the biggest thing is the industry now is controlled in New York, and country music
So the record labels aren't owned by local companies anymore.
Well, the record labels have a Nashville branch. There's Sony Nashville and things like that, right? UMG is sort of mostly here and things, but but Capitol and Warner Brothers and all that, those are bigger corporations that are controlled in New York and LA. So, RCA is going to fall under Sony, and so that's all really controlled by New York and LA. And of course, radio is pretty much all controlled in New York. The programming and all of that is, and I mean, let's be realistic. It's not the bastion of country music is not New York City. So, a lot of the folks up there just are not really country music fans. And, you couple that with there's always been pop crossover artists. There's always been, going back as long as you want to, there have been Glenn Campbell and Kenny Rogers and, Shania Twain and Garth Brooks and, people that did some country and some pop and crossed over. And then, what's been on country radio for years has been country music and a few other things, but it was a song here and a song there. And there have been trends that got a little more poppy and trends that got a little more traditional. We went through a real traditional trend in the early 80s that brought us Garth Brooks and Randy Travis and Reba McEntire and Alabama and all that. But then Alabama, got a little more of a rock and pop kind of feel. There's always been these kind of trends, and that's fine. I mean, music is an opinion, and people like what they like and they don't like what they don't like.
Let me ask you a question. We've had some tremendous artists here. I mean, we've had John Berry on before. We've had Linda Davis with us. We've had Barbara Fairchild. All of them have had some great success. But we've also had a lot of artists here in the studio that have had number one hits on like Christian country or other charts, but they haven't broke into that top 100. So what is the difference? There's so many people that come here and they pay to have somebody produce and promote their music, and it's usually them paying an awful lot of money, and then they end up, making number one on some charts, but nobody's heard it anywhere. Right. Explain how that all happens.
Well, when we say charts,
yeah,
it sounds important, right?
Right.
And it is. I mean, but there are so many charts, right? There are charts by the organizations of genres, like a bluegrass chart from the Bluegrass Association and an Americana chart, the Americana Association. But then there's all kinds of charts. I can make a chart. You can make a chart, right?
That's my point exactly.
And that's, so that's good, but it's not really the major point. The point behind this, as far as what pays the bills, what matters on contracts, what creates a career, and creates memorable music, is really Billboard. I mean, that is the
Billboard,
chart.
Is Billboard
that matters.
Like the granddaddy of them all?
That is the granddaddy
so
of them all.
So if you don't make Billboard, you really haven't.
Right, and that's really what radio, when you look across the country at all these 1, 2, 3, 4, major, mid, minor radio stations, they have programming, and that's determined at a high level by the folks in New York. Now, an independent radio station, there are still some independent radio stations. They can do what they want to do. They can play what they want to play. And many of them in the country world play traditional and oldies because they see that as a whole in the market, right? I mean, the major iHeart and things like that, that's pretty much what you hear on your major country radio stations. That's all controlled in New York. But, cities, especially Nashville and bigger, and even half the size of Nashville, have at least one, maybe two country radio stations. And maybe they're both corporate. Maybe one of them is an independent. And the independent may play oldies or whatever that program director wants to play. But the thing about it is, what's on the big charts and on the big stations, that's what most people hear. And that's what Billboard. Most people are aware. Billboard controls that Hot 100 chart. And
Hot 100, not Top 100.
Yeah, there's a top 40 out of the Hot 100, but you have to get there, right? I mean, there's songs, I've had songs that made it almost to that level that artists cut. But and then Christmas music, we talk about Christmas music. There's not really a Christmas chart because it only occurs for a month, and they just don't count it,
Well, I'm trying to help that guy like you, and we have so many friends that have spent, almost their life savings getting people to cut, record after record after record, and then they end up, number one on some chart, but it's not. Mm-hmm. It's not Billboard, and they think that they're doing something, and they invest everything they've got. And I know of a guy right now that's planning on moving to Nashville because they think they can make it in Nashville, but it's much tougher than.
And they may. Yeah. People do, right? I mean, lightning strikes somewhere all the time, right? So everybody that made it did, right? I mean, they came here. Lots of people didn't, but all the ones that did clearly did. So it's always possible. It's completely driven by the artists themselves nowadays. I mean, their own social media, their own money, their own investors, whatever that's going to be. Labels aren't making money off of selling records anymore. So they're not investing like they used to invest. They just rely on the artist to bring them the money. The artist has to pay for virtually everything, and create their own music as a pitching organization. And if you don't know what that means, is we have a group and we'll bring a guest in, like a producer or a song plugger, or used to be A&R people from record labels, and they would come and they would listen to songs for 2 hours, and they would take the thing they liked and pass on the things that they didn't. And those pitch meetings happen every day, all up and down, everywhere in Nashville. And we would have them, and we still do. And, you want somebody to cut that, and, that's great, cutting the song is really good, but you're not making very many records anymore. There's no physical product hardly taking place.
Because when you and I were talking a few days ago here in the studio, you indicated that, an artist 25, 30 years ago, of course, I grew up when we had the 45 record, the 78 record, then the cassette and the 8-track, and and then the CDs and the DVDs, even on the movie side, all of that content, that physical content is gone. Nobody can make any money off that product anymore.
Well, it's very little. It's very little. Artists a lot of times will make a CD that they can sell at a concert or a show or something as merch,
on their table.
But most of the actual money changing hands is for merch or for ticket sales, because the song itself isn't really generating money really anymore.
Really? So explain that. So somebody comes along and they've got a record that, they've got 20 million views. In the old days, it would have been 20 million sales. How did they not make money?
Well, one of the things that happened in the process of all this, and this goes back to Napster, was the first thing that
Tell us what Napster
created. Napster was the first file sharing downloadable way for you to record a song, create an MP3 version of that song, which is a WAV file, sample version of the song, and then send it to your friends. No money is changing hands. The artist doesn't know about it. Nobody's getting credit for it. The record label didn't sell another copy of that record. You just gave it to your friends. And that's great. And like you said, we grew up making little car copies for 8-tracks of things, but we would take our album and put it in the player and make a copy of it. And people would make mixtapes, and all those things have happened, but it was never to the extent that it destroyed an industry like this has. And all of the money that was generated by record sales, virtually all of that is gone. And virtually that was the place where songwriters got paid. Songwriters get paid two ways. It's all royalties, but there's two kinds of royalties. Mechanical royalties are generated by the sale of a product, right? When you bought a CD, there's mechanical royalties that went out as they counted all of those. Whatever the 45, whatever the product was, and then downloads and things like that became counted as that, and they still do. We just get paid. It went up to, I think, 4/1,000th of a penny when you stream a song by somebody on one of those platforms. That's how much money they're keeping their money, but that's all they give us. And obviously that's next to nothing. And you saw people like Taylor Swift and people like that taking their songs off of those platforms because they wrote the songs and they weren't getting paid. So that's a big factor. So the mechanical aspect of it is practically gone, which leaves the other half, and that's performance royalties. And that's what I'm here for, because performance royalties cover radio.
Yep.
They cover in the movies, they cover, if you go on a TV show and do the song or whatever. And then they incorporated a small percentage of that for live performances when the artist goes on tour and they release a list of the songs that they play. They count those, and some of that goes back to the writers. But that's really up to the artist to come up with that money, and there's not a governing body making them do it either.
The artist has to come up with the money.
Pretty much the artist has to come up with everything anymore.
That is crazy, isn't it? Yeah. So, I feel so bad for so many people that, that sell everything they have and come to Nashville, Tennessee, thinking they're going to make it into big time country music or pop music, and it just doesn't happen like it did in the 50s, 60s, and 70s and like that.
And we look back, 500 years from now, we could look back on this as this industry that we grew up in, thinking this is how it works, as a blip on the radar. Music has existed for thousands of years at campfires and caves and cabins and front porches forever, right? It was only when they invented that 78 and a way to sell a physical product that it actually became a business and an industry that made money. And of course,
everything else was live prior to that.
Everything else was, that was what killed the big band era ultimately, was they just couldn't afford to pay all those musicians to drive around all day. And honestly, I like big band music, and I understand that. Concert tours are expensive and all of that. So So that's kind of the situation that the songwriters are in. There are a lot of folks,
You're a songwriter as opposed to a
musician,
singer?
artist, whatever. Yeah, no, I'm a songwriter.
Yeah.
And I know I'm a songwriter. So there's a lot of folks who, I mean, I came to Nashville and I'm going, they do not need me here. They do not need another below average guitar player in Nashville. But they need songs. They will always need songs.
You can be the greatest guitar player in Topeka, Kansas, and be below average in Nashville, Tennessee.
I'm sure.
The standard is really high.
It is amazing. I have been blessed with so many friends and gotten to know genius musicians sitting in studios at 3 o'clock in the morning working on my songs. And that's an amazing feeling when you come to Nashville thinking, okay, I got something to offer and I'm going to give it my best shot. And you do. And then you get in a studio with the best musicians in the world, and they really like what you wrote, and they really want to give it their best performance. It's an amazing feeling, and I love it. It's too bad that so much of that is going away. AI is replacing even more of that now. But yeah, that's the part of it. So I looked at when I was elected president of TSAI, I wanted to fix that to whatever level I could. And my approach is the songwriter's approach. Again, there are many other people that want to help and want to improve the condition of country radio. And instead of the either or argument, my proposal is both. I think that there is room for both. I think
so. You're saying traditional or classic country plus,
absolutely.
Would you call it a pop country or?
Pop country is what we have. So there is currently a list of radio stations that play that format. And then again, just so you know, there's what we call reporting stations. If you ever heard that term, there's a small percentage of those that are the major ones. They're the ones that report to the recording industry and other organizations what they played, and that's how we get paid royalties for performance. And again, that's about the only place songwriters get paid anymore. So that was my attack point. That's what I wanted to fix. And my solution to that is right here, actually on these wristbands. My wife and I trademarked the phrase real country music on radio, which kind of was a way to say all of it should be on radio, not just the pop, hip hop, bro country thing that they do now. That includes traditional country, which there are a load of new good traditional artists out there. Christian, rockabilly, bluegrass, Americana, all this stuff is still being written. Their artists are still performing it. People still go to their shows in big ways. You look at the award shows, Chris Stapleton and people like that have been winning awards for years and not being on the radio.
Chris Stapleton, since you mentioned that. So Chris Stapleton, is he played on the radio today?
Not much.
But
I mean, that Justin Timberlake, one, probably got the biggest airplay, but
I mean, Chris Stapleton has like the most iconic voice.
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing.
Well, the talent is still here. You're talking about people who come to Nashville thinking they can make it. They might. If they're good, they might. And there's just not room for everybody. And that's part of what this would fix, too, is make more room. Because, again, there's 24 hours in a day currently playing pop country. If you duplicated that with an entire second list of radio stations with their own reporting stations playing traditional country, new traditional as well as oldies, now you have 48 hours a day worth of country music on the radio, and you doubled the opportunities for everyone. Songwriters like myself, artists that are really just traditional, now they are going to get played on a national way and chart on if we can get Billboard to do it, chart on a Billboard chart for traditional. And when you look back at what Billboard did, you mentioned Top 40. I'm pretty old, and in 1958, Billboard came out with what they called the Top 40, and they took the best of the three existing charts, what was the black chart and the hillbilly chart and the pop chart. And they said, well, we're going to kind of make a top 40 version of the best of all of those. And that's where we got top 40 to begin with. And all I'm asking the Billboard to do is to do the same thing with traditional. Take the best of the traditional artists, the best of the bluegrass, whatever songs are kind of rising to the top of those charts, Americana and folk and gospel and everything, and create an alternative second traditional country chart.
Wow.
And these wristbands are a fundraiser. TSAI, Tennessee Songwriters Association, has a website. It's tsainashville.com. And you can order these, make donations there. Please do, by the way. We need all the help we can get, and we need all the people behind it we can get.
Well, we've got about 2 minutes left. In that time,
Oh, I have one thing that I want to add before we do that. One of the biggest things, I'd mentioned people pulling on this same rope, the Grammys this year, for the first time, are going to have a pop album of the year, country album of the year, and a traditional country album of the year. This is huge. This is the first big step in a big way to what I'm trying to accomplish.
yeah, it sounds like it. All right, so we got about a minute left. Tell us how that person that, has come to Nashville, like all of the people that come here and sing it in your corner. We do not get the Chris Stapletons, and
Yeah, John Barry here. I was there that night. That was awesome.
well, yeah, we get John Barry occasionally. But how does somebody, how do they make money in this business today, other than working at,
As an artist,
yeah,
artists get paid to perform, and frankly, that's been their biggest. Anyway, I mean, there are huge artists that don't write anything. Some of the greatest artists of all time, Elvis and George Strait, and the major artists didn't write and don't write anything. They're paid to perform, and all of their money, all these platinum albums and everything they did, that money went to the label and to the producers and to the songwriters and things like that.
They get paid for,
but they
doing
got
the
paid to
concert,
perform
because people will come see them play.
But the better the songs are, the more people will come to see them.
Yeah.
Right? So
It's
that's
a
where you go
catch-22.
to football stadiums.
Amen.
So-
Yeah, some of them make gigantic amounts of money, and most of them, don't make any at all. It's sad, and we see
It
them.
is.
There's hundreds of them. Paul, thank you so much for joining us
Thank
today.
you.
We'll do it
Thank you
again
very
soon.
much. Absolutely, anytime.
Thank you. Friend, thank you for watching today. We'll look forward to seeing you on the next edition of In Your Corner.